So now it comes to using the golden section. So in that previous video, I showed you how to create and how to measure the golden section. Now we're going to actually see it. Now there's two things where we see it and how we use it as artists. We see it in the world around us and we look for the pattern of it, the repetition of it, and we also can use it as a compositional device when we're putting pictures together or creating spaces for pictures. So the first thing I want to deal with is when we see it in nature, and I showed you the shell before, the Nautilus shell, and it being sort of a classic example of that spiral that we see. But you see other examples of the golden section in other shells and other parts of nature as well. And probably we don't see nautiluses like this on our beaches around here as much, but we do see the classic abalone. And the abalone, you can see that same spiral probably clearer than what you can see there in the nautilus. You see a few, and you see it repeated a couple of times. So you see it here in this outer edge that goes along through here, and you see it again repeated, these breathing holes, or whatever that part of the shell is, whatever the abalone uses those for, breathing, etc. You see that repeated as another spiral just inside it. Again, on the other side too, you see this spiral happening. When you start to think about a shell like this too, you are starting to think about, you know, that spiral that when I drew it before was within the dimensions of a golden section rectangle. So you can almost, if you imagine putting a square, or I should say a rectangle, around the proportions of this shell, it would almost fit within a golden section rectangle itself. So that, by that, would be that proportion of 1 to 1.618. Things get interesting too, even when you hold it on its side, like this too, that you can start to maybe see other proportions start to happen. So this is where it becomes really useful to use that dividing into 8 and looking for 3 and 5. So say, for instance, me looking at that there, is that I think if you look at the top of the shell, maybe to where this line is here, and then from that line of bumps there on the shell to the bottom of the shell, we could be looking at a 3 and a 5 there. So there becomes these other divisions that fit within those proportions again. Probably to show you again some interesting proportions that you see in shells. So I've got another shell happening here that again you would say, well, compared to the abalone and that, it hasn't got a definite spiral, but there is a spiral when you look down onto it like that, and that's the very center of a golden section spiral starting to happen. But there are other interesting divisions starting to happen when you look at these spaces between these sections here. Okay, and particularly in this section, through here, it becomes quite interesting. So, I mean, if you start to look at maybe, and I'm just going to put the shell on its side here, and if you start to think about the divisions of space between here and here to here, so those lines, and put them like that, maybe can you start to see how this part and this part have the same relationship or the same space as this part and this part, and then this part to this part, etc. So you can start to see there is a 3 and a 5. and there is a 3 and a 5. And it goes on and on and on all the way along. Probably if we started to look even closer, and if you start to look at maybe this side, if you start to look at the division of between there's the bottom of the shell and the top of the shell, and where this point is here, where we start to see and the opening start to appear, if I take that away, there's the beginnings of maybe a 5 and a 3 proportion difference as well. So you can see there's lots of different applications of it in there. But we also see the golden section in plants and things as well. And this is where we have to understand that there's other shapes. So we've looked at the spiral in terms of the golden section, and that golden section rectangle. There's also a golden triangle, which is roughly those sort of proportions like that. And also the pentagon has a relationship to the golden section, and as such then to the 5-sided star, the pentagonal star, which if you look at the pentagonal star is the pentagon there in the centre with each of these type of triangles out off each side. So there's lots happening in that. And these are the kind of shapes that we need to look at when we start to look at flowers and other aspects of nature like that. So if you're seeing this is a plant just from my garden, the Nicotiana, and they have these lovely long scented white flowers that are very smelly at night, quite beautiful and sweet. But again, straight away when you look at that, and here you can see the pentagonal or the star here of its flower, and how it's got its 5 sides through here. So there's those shapes, pentagonal shapes like that have those proportions. But also, interestingly, when you lay it out like this, and there's, again, lots of seeds coming everywhere here and a few bugs, if you start to look at maybe the distances here between where each of these flowers is leaving the stem, if you look at the relationship of this to here, can you see there's a 5 and a 3? If you look at the relationship between this and this, again, 5 and 3, 5 and 3, 5 and 3, all the way along. Probably even a little bit there, it's easy to see there actually. So 5 to 3, 5 to 3, 5 to 3, and it keeps going and keeps going. And these are just some examples of where you can see it in nature. I now want to show you a painting that displays elements or is based around using the golden section, and that's Hans Heysen's Droving into the Light. It's a painting that we've probably all seen one way or another on a relative's wall. It was a very popular print, and so we've probably become a little blasé about it, but he's an artist who really constructed his paintings. And rather than show you a painter or an artwork from the Renaissance or something, I think it's better for me to show you something that is closer to home. So, as the name and the title suggests of that painting, Into the Light, the subject matter is not necessarily about the gum trees or the drover and the sheep. It's about the light. And if you start to divide and look at the total width, so from the left to the right of the painting, and divide that into 8 equal parts, and then see what happens on where 3 and 5 meet, you'll notice that that's the position of the sun, both horizontally in that division and vertically in that division. So Hyson has placed the main motive, the light, in the key position in terms of his structure. From there you see further divisions. So you can see from that part where the position of the sun is, then to the side of the picture, he'll divide that into 8 equal parts. And again, on a 3 and a 5, place a tree, place the figure, etc., etc. There's not a part of this painting that Hyson hasn't considered in terms of the golden section. It is completely balanced and positioned and created with the golden section in mind. He was a very good composer, and as I said, we have become a little bit blasé about the subject matter, a bit nostalgic, I think. But when you actually stand back and see what he's doing as a craftsman, how he's constructing these paintings, they're very, very cleverly done, and are a good source of compositional study. If you want to see an artist really using the golden section well, is to look at him. If you don't want to be looking at Renaissance paintings and those sort of works. Otherwise, I mean, if you do want to look at Renaissance paintings, there's the beautiful painting by Da Vinci called The Annunciation. And in that, there is a lot of golden section divisions. The painting is a long, skinny painting, but it is actually 2 golden sections overlapping. And then there are further divisions within the painting that create other interesting diagonals and spirals and other things going on.